So I found this interesting. So this is from Human Spective. And it says, just in, leaders of the Freedom Convoy, Tamara Lich and Christine Anderson, side by side at the European Parliamentary UN Parliamentary Plenary Session. Oh, God, I can't even pronounce that. Taxpayers of Justin Trudeau's Canada have paid over $5 million for her prosecution, Tamara Lich. With Tamara and company paying close to $1 million in legal fees. This is what they're trying to do all over the world. Demoralize and bankrupt you, but I'm here to tell you they picked on the wrong woman. She talks about the Truckers' Freedom Convoy in Canada, how it all went down, and what the current landscape is. Great to see two freedom warriors side by side in the European Parliament. So we have a bit of the video here. It's like a 10-minute long clip. We're not going to show all of it, but I'm going to show you a couple minutes of it. And it's amazing because we didn't really know what was happening with Tamara Lich. We know that there was obviously that trial. They were trying to charge her with mischief and conspiracy to attack the federal government. There was just heinous, unlawful, unethical practices that they were trying to cover up and further demonize her and demonize Chris Barber, who was another contender. There was another guy, Pat King, who just got his charges dropped. We're going to get to a story on that on Friday. Also, R.B. Ham, Richard Ringerton. Many of you know from his show on Rumble here. He's been relentlessly charged by the Saskatchewan government by him peacefully protesting. So go and support his Give, Send, Go. But anyway, here's what Tamara Lich had to say at the European Parliament.
First of all, thank you, Madam Anderson, for inviting me, and to the ASN group for inviting me here to speak today. And I'm very honored and humbled to be receiving your award tomorrow night. In the winter of 2022, I'm not going to get into obviously the specifics of the pandemic. I think we all have lived through that. A small group of us connected, and most of us strangers, didn't know each other, connected and decided to drive to Ottawa to protest the tyrannical and draconian COVID-19 pandemic mandates. As the rest of the world was beginning to open up and ease the restrictions, our Prime Minister started to double down. We were not allowed to leave the country. They were actually talking at that time about ceasing even interprovincial travel in Canada. So we decided to come together as a group, and we organized the Freedom Convoy from home. We started on the 14th of January, and 10 days later we were rolling to Ottawa. And we never could have imagined the support that we were going to receive. We honestly thought that we would just drive there, you know, a small group of us. But what we saw, obviously, as you guys probably did too, on the sides of the roads and the overpasses, was an overwhelming number of Canadians out there to support us, who finally felt hope for the first time in years, who finally felt proud to be Canadian for the first time in years, and who saw what we were doing as a light in the dark. As you know, the takedown of the convoy was something that I never could have imagined that I would see in my country. I grew up watching that stuff happen in third world countries. On the 6th of February, there was a raid at one of our outposts where we kept our supplies, and they had snipers on the roof pointed at hardworking, peaceful Canadians. They stole our fuel, they took our food, and it was, like I said, something that I could not have imagined that I would have ever seen before. We have politicians calling us terrorists, domestic terrorists, racists, even accusing us of trying to burn down an apartment building and insinuating that the truckers were rapists. This is not the Canada that I grew up in. What's happening now is unprecedented. Canada, in my opinion, used to be a very free country, unless I grew up very naive, but that's what I was taught. We were a democracy. And what we saw was not democratic. We had hundreds of thousands of people in Ottawa, and they still refused to talk to us. Within the span of 3 weeks, we received $24 million in donations. The first GoFundMe campaign that we started, which was taking in $1 million a day in donations as we traveled across the country, was frozen after the politicians contacted GoFundMe and told them that we were domestic terrorists and that they were funding terrorism. We then started a Give, Send, Go, and the donors donated even more money, about $12 million, just over $12 million at that time. And that was also taken from us, except for that there is a little bit of money. There's about $3.5 million that they froze that's sitting in an escrow account. How they treated those donations and how they treated us is how you would treat a drug cartel. In Canada, unprecedented. Our Prime Minister ran away and hid and refused to even send anyone out to talk to us. And as a matter of fact, he even said that he's attended protests before, but only those that he supports. In my opinion, the leader of a country leads all of their people, not just the ones who believe in the same ideology. That is his job, and he failed us. They all failed us. We tried to speak to lots of the MPs, and they all said no. I was arrested on February the 17th, thrown into solitary confinement. I called it the dungeon. Accused at that time, I had one charge. It was counsel others to commit the offense of mischief, which did not occur. A few weeks later, well, first of all, I was denied bail. We had a bail hearing and I was denied bail, which is quite something in Canada because murderers and rapists make bail. Most bail hearings last about 15 minutes. Mine lasted 2 days and cost usually about $50,000 in legal fees. So these are the people that we're dealing with. I spent 18 days in jail the first time I was arrested at the convoy. And I was rearrested in the summer of 2022 after attending a Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms Awards dinner where they honored me with their Freedom Award. And at that dinner, there was a photograph taken of me with one of the gentlemen that's on my no contact order. I'm under bail conditions still, 2.5 years later. However, there was lawyers all around us. Anyways, for the first time in Canadian history, there was a Canada-wide warrant issued for my arrest for the charge of mischief. Unprecedented. Absolutely unprecedented.
So there you go. Like I said, it's a fairly lengthy clip. I'm not going to show all of it. But, you know, this is a Canadian woman who I've read her book. I've read the Holding the Line book. And people looked at that. I remember someone spoke out when they saw me start to read that book. And they said, why would you read something about her? Why would you read something about that domestic terrorist, the guy, the traitor of Canada? And I said, I don't care what you feel about her. I don't care what you feel about the convoy. I don't care what you feel about the feeling of these people. But I want to hear her side of the story. Because all I kept hearing was the media's perception. And the media was telling me that these truckers, these Canadian truckers, these people that were deemed, essential workers at the beginning, Justin Trudeau once, congratulated them for doing the hard work during during COVID and the lockdowns, that they were transporting the goods for Canada. All of a sudden, now they become these domestic terrorists, these, traitors, these violators. They're racist. They're misogynistic. One of them had a swastika flag, which turned out to be false. It was a fabricated, photoshopped image that they shared to the mainstream media. And I said, I wanted to hear the other side. I wanted to hear the perspective of people in that protest so I can understand why this took place. And when I was reading her story, when I was reading this background, the way they attacked her, the way they demonized her, this woman that we barely knew at the start, is just so awful and so unprecedented, just unethical. and also just un-Canadian. And we're supposed to be the nation of, nice people and nice neighbors and keeping our community. And, oh, we're just so pleasant and friendly up here. And we just villainously go after someone like Tamara Lich or Chris Barber and demonize them as domestic terrorists, charge them with mischief, charge them with a bunch of unlawful tactics to try to squash out this movement, to try to squash out this united front that cultivated many people, not just truckers, not just white people, but many Canadians of all walks of life, all occupations, all religions, all backgrounds, all races, that came together in support of these draconian measures, which was affecting everybody. It was affecting everybody. And the fact that they demonized the trucker industry, the truckers who are the most vaccinated group, occupation in the country at the time, was even more heinous. But they want to demonize them because they weren't compliant to the bigger cartel. Speaking of drug cartels, the biggest drug cartel was the pharmaceutical industry that bought our politicians to do this. Because that's the only measurement we have of these mandates. They weren't scientific. It wasn't proven by any university physician or any focus group. It was done by big pharmaceuticals and government authoritarians to implement these policies that we were forced to comply to. And as Tamara Lich points out, that is not democratic. We're supposed to be a democratic nation. Where on earth was the democracy in any of that? We didn't get a choice. We didn't get a say. They just told us to deal with it. And if you don't want to, as Justin Trudeau screamed at people, well, you don't want to get on a bus or a plane or a train, you don't want to be next to vaccinated people, then you have to get vaccinated. You have to get the ArriveCan app so we can monitor and spy on you. And we know that all these measures, all the lockdowns, all the lies that they've told throughout this pandemic has finally blown up in their faces, and still, no one's held accountable to their actions. I have not seen anything about Theresa Tam, who is the top health minister in Canada, the one who predicted how we should have this kind of draconian measure. She told that in a 2010 documentary. Well, isn't it great we'll have this opportunity to put these mandates onto people and see if they comply? That's what she said in a 2010 documentary, and then 2020 happened. Look at a viral outbreak. Great opportunity to do it. She's never held to account. And they're still trying to push some measures to this. They're still trying to push the outdated mandates. I'm still seeing places that they're forcing people to put on masks. I'm still seeing places that want you to get that, 10th or 11th jab now, which I can tell you is very safe and effective according to YouTube standards. But I just wanted to show that so that people are aware. Tamara Lich is just a Canadian from the prairies, a very smart, well-educated. This is not a dumb trucker, redneck hillbilly that just doesn't give a damn. This is a Canadian who is fighting for other Canadians. And she got hit hard the most with this unlawful tactic. Same with Chris Barber, same with other people, but she was the centerfold for the unjust practices that our nation did to our own Canadians. And still continues to do so. They still want to vilify her. They still want to demonize her. They still want to call her this unwanted, domestic terrorist. When literally we are bailing out violent criminals. Ridiculously violent criminals in this country. Just think about that.